What's good everyone, this is Arcane here and welcome to a different kind of video. I'm gonna be reviewing a film that hasn't even come out yet. So you may be wondering, how exactly is this a review when the film is not out yet? Well, there's plenty of advertising material out there already, and I've seen enough. And there's a lot of stuff that's happened before this film has even been conceptualized. So based on that, I've decided that I'm not gonna watch this film. So, in the footsteps of Cinemassacre's Ghostbusters 2016 non-review, this is a non-review of Superman Legacy, or just Superman, which is the title now, releasing this July on the 11th. Not only am I not gonna watch this film in cinemas, I'm also not gonna be supporting the DCU. Why, you may ask? Here's why. First of all, this film does not look good at all. The way it is presented, the writing and characters are just not appealing to me. Moreover, this is literally a mix of Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman with a lighter tone, and it introduces way more superheroes in this foundational film of a new cinematic universe. And all the real DC fans criticize BVS for that, but somehow they don't have a problem with this new film having way too many superhero characters? That just reeks of hypocrisy. Be prepared, there's more instances of hypocrisy and double standards to uncover here. And honestly, there is so much to talk about these so-called real DC fans that a separate video is required for them. In the first 45 minutes of the new trailer, Clark Kent aka Superman loses his temper and starts yelling at Lois Lane to justify his actions. Since when did Clark Kent have a bad temper? We have always seen him deal with problems with a cool temperament and he's known for doing that. That is not the case here. If Zack Snyder or any other filmmaker did this, there would be a huge explosion of hate against them. But it's James Gunn, so there's no problem here. Am I right, real DC fans? This also speaks a lot about how James Gunn sees Superman, and we're already not off to a great start. Also, ever wondered why David Corenswith's Superman says, "Eyes up here" in this scene? Because everyone's looking at his underwear and is wondering whether this guy is a fully grown adult pretending to be a baby or actually a baby. Oh my gosh. It's gonna be a recurring joke, isn't it? Which brings me to James Gunn. Back in 2022, when it was announced that he and Peter Safran were gonna be the CEOs of the newly established DC studios, I knew at that point that they are not the right people to spearhead a brand like DC, especially James Gunn. This guy is a mediocre filmmaker at best. He's had some successes in the MCU, which is how he established his name in the industry, with the Guardians of the Galaxy films, which were alright at best. And they were literally the same type of film James Gunn is known for, a superhero ensemble. If you look at James Gunn's filmography and the projects he's been doing lately, he's made a specific formula for his content. And with that, he's been making the exact same thing over and over and over again to great success. Basically, this is the only type of film that he's ever made in his career. So how can anyone trust such a person to be in charge of a brand like DC? Not to mention his past. He's been known for organizing pedophilia-themed parties, posting jokes on pedophilia and raping comic book characters, contestants on America's Got Talent, including children. This is why he was fired from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 initially, but was reinstated upon backlash from the cast and the public. Remember, he said, "I completely relate to Superman because he's everything that I am." Are you sure about that, James? Superman definitely wouldn't believe in pedophilia and think of raping children as a funny act. And he definitely wouldn't disregard someone's work on your first major success. So what is this formula, you may ask? Let's see. An ensemble team, quirky characters, an animal character, that is very important, and an emotional subplot that has some significant importance. In the beginning, these characters don't get along with each other. But at the end, they get it together and fight the big bad villain and succeed. Sometimes in the most unconventional ways possible. Like dancing. And to top it all off, it isn't a James Gunn film without bad jokes. Unfunny, juvenile humor that he's very well known for, which may have been derived from his colorful past. And guess what? This is exactly what he's been doing and what he's doing now. The Guardians of the Galaxy films, The Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, and now Superman Legacy. What James Gunn always does is that he strays away from comic book accuracy and changes a lot of character traits in many characters to suit his needs. There is a reason why Dave Bautista's portrayal of Drax the Destroyer is not even close to the real character from the Marvel comics. a broody, vengeful character, was reduced to comedic relief in his films. He's done the same thing for his Suicide Squad film, for example, King Shark, and now he's brought major changes to many characters in Superman. Superman is now a meta-human. And there's no backlash, no uproar, nothing. Once again, if any other filmmaker did this, they would not be spared. It's James Gunn, he's gonna save DC. Right? Where are those comic book purists and gatekeepers now? And what is up with James Gunn using characters from the previous regime and bringing them to the DCU like it's nothing? If you remember, Peacemaker is from the Suicide Squad, which is part of the DCEU. So this reboot is nothing but a partial reboot, where everything else is rebooted except Gunn's characters. What kind of BS is this? Now, another question that's probably looming around in your mind is why I am calling this film by its original name, which is Superman Legacy. Because if you analyze it closely and look back at the promotional material like the trailers and whatnot, this is a clear homage to the 1978 film. It's clearly honoring the legacy of the 1978 film and using it as its identity. The same theme music by John Williams is back, except it's done using electric guitars. The red colored diaper, underwear is back, which in my opinion is so outdated, and what's up with these Guardians of the Galaxy-esque lines, whatever. And characters like Jimmy Olsen and Eve Teskmacher and more, along with an additional truckload of characters that we will be looking at next. So this film is clearly made for the nostalgia factor and for those who love the 1978 film. First off, I'm gonna be very honest with you. I don't think the 1978 film was good, or even Richard Donner's cut of Superman 2. Both of these films have not aged well in my opinion. Christopher Reeve's Superman is cool in some parts. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for his Clark Kent, and the writing and characters just don't resonate with me. Sure, it is an old film. This is a 50-year-old film that we're talking about, and things may not be as relatable as it was back then. But even then, the writing just wasn't it. I didn't care about any of these characters, not even Superman himself, especially at the end. Seriously, what the hell was this? I'm not gonna dive too deep into these films because they deserve a separate video, to be honest. But some people pretend that this is the gold standard of Superman for some unknown reason. And let me tell you, it's not. Christopher McQuarrie is 100% right when he said that you don't need to be under the shadow of the 1978 film. And you don't need John Williams' score to make Superman relevant today. Zack Snyder already proved that with Man of Steel. It's crazy because a lot of these so-called fans are clamoring at others to move on from Zack Snyder's and Henry Cavill's Superman, but they themselves are blinded by nostalgia and can't move on from an outdated 50-year-old version of Superman. What kind of double standards are these, real DC fans? Either way, this film looks very goofy. For me, that throws me off hard. Let's call it a cinematic red flag, if you will. Ever since Marvel films have popularized the idea of having jokes and unserious moments every 5 seconds, even in the middle of serious scenarios, almost every single modern film has it now. And I don't like it at all. There's a reason why nowadays comic book films are not as successful as they used to be. When your superhero film lacks substance and is made just for the sake of it to fulfill its existence in a cinematic universe, it's gonna appeal to a very small portion of the audience. Deadpool and Wolverine is an exception because it piggybanks on nostalgia so hard to get the audience they need. And it worked, despite the R rating. But it's not always gonna be the same for every superhero film. In case you've been following this film, the story has been leaked. I'm not gonna cover it here, but if you have read it by chance, you know that it's a piece of garbage. It has similar elements from the DonnerVerse and even Zack Snyder's films such as Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, but this time it's done in the most outlandish manner possible. Again, I'm not gonna spoil this film to any of you, but it's crazy to think that just because a particular trope worked in 1978, it will work exactly the same way in 2025. It just won't. Not to mention that since this film is called Superman, you would expect this film to be a solo film that completely focuses on Superman. Well, that's not happening either. If you remember the formula I mentioned earlier, James Gunn couldn't resist not using it. So he has to bring this new team that no one knows much about. The Justice Gang. You've seen a bit of some of the characters in the new Peacemaker trailer, but because they have been given the same treatment from James Gunn, with awful dialogues and characterization, you don't really care about them, unless you're a hardcore James Gunn fan. As if that wasn't enough, there's Guy Gardner aka Green Lantern, Crypto the Superdog, remember, the animal character, and even Supergirl portrayed by Millie Alcock will be making a cameo. Apparently she will be making her debut in a drunken manner, which is very similar to Aquaman's cameo in The Flash. And just so you know, this cameo is part of the notes provided by James Gunn for that film. He just can't help himself not to make these characters a joke, and it shows. Don't you think that there's too many characters in the Superman film? And some people thought that Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman appearing in one film was too much and overcrowded. The same people are dead silent with this new film. This shouldn't be called Superman. It should be called Superman, Krypto, and the Justice Gang. And how exactly are these characters gonna be fleshed out in the short runtime is beyond me. Another thing I don't like about James Gunn is that despite forming a separate label for stories that are not part of the DCU, called DC Elseworlds, he doesn't want any other iteration of any DC character to have their separate story continue when the DCU is already taking place. This is why Superman and Lois, The Flash, and other DC shows and films, which could be Elseworlds stories, were discontinued and cancelled. This could also be the case for Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2, and apparently there's plans to bring in Robert Pattinson's Batman in the DCU. I genuinely hope that's not the case because it would be so much better off as an Elseworlds story. Also, very recently, Joel Schumacher's definitive cut of Batman Forever, starring the late Val Kilmer as the Caped Crusader, was scheduled to be screened in a theatre in Los Angeles. But WB sent them a cease and desist notice, resulting in the cancellation of the screening. Val Kilmer sadly passed away very recently, so it would be great to see his true performance brought to a wider audience. And somehow the suits and possibly James Gunn has a problem with that? WB has a huge history of messing around with directors and their creative vision. Even Richard Donner himself wasn't spared. And even then, they never learn from their mistakes. They're already doing a bunch of damage control to this film before its release, and it's also looking like another Justice League situation. This is another reason why WB will never find success in the DC projects, with some exceptions, because they don't trust their creators enough. They didn't trust Richard Donner in 1980, they didn't trust Joel Schumacher in 1994, they didn't trust Zack Snyder and David Ayer in 2016, and now is the turn of the co-CEO of DC Studios. Not even that much power is enough to guarantee our artistic integrity to survive in this environment. At this point, I'm pretty much convinced that WB should not be in control of the DC brand anymore. If that is not enough to convince anyone, I don't know what will. Also, why is the marketing for this film mostly focusing on the side characters rather than the main man himself? I'm literally only seeing stuff for Krypto, the Justice Gang, Guy Gardner, and literally anyone but Superman. For some reason, James Gunn is given more priority than Superman himself. What is going on here? This literally emphasizes the fact that James Gunn is too full of himself, and he depends on side characters to prop up his main protagonist. In simple terms, this guy cannot make a solo film focusing on a single character. Is this how the future of the DCU is gonna be? Especially the projects James Gunn is in charge of? Finally, I would like to give a special mention to a superior story that deserves to be finished and brought to audiences worldwide. And that is the SnyderVerse. I'm not gonna lie, I was not the biggest fan of Superman until I watched Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. The way he presents Superman, with the help of some masterful writing, in the most human and grounded manner, made me fall in love with the character. And not just Superman, even Batman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Aquaman, and The Flash were very well realized in his films. This is why I believe that Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, and Zack Snyder's Justice League are among the best comic book films ever made. In my personal top 5 comic book films, and people are still talking about these films even to this day, because they are that impactful. Zack Snyder has set the bar way too high for comic book films, and so far, no one has been able to cross that bar, in my personal opinion. Even Christopher Nolan shares the same opinion, so don't get mad at me. WB also has a major role in this mess. I've already mentioned a lot of it earlier, but this whole division of fandoms within the DC brand is because of WB themselves. They have lost the connection to their core audience and providing them the exact opposite of what they are asking for. Instead, they are catering to a group of bots on the internet who take up a lot of cyberspace, but they hold no significant impact in real life. You can pretty much apply the same to the MCU as well. They should have focused on Zack Snyder's vision without interfering in his storytelling process. Remember, this all started when they cut out 30 minutes from Dawn of Justice, where all the necessary plot points that helped drive the film and story forward were left out of the theatrical cut. In an ideal world, this would have never happened. And in 2017, instead of the disastrous Frankenstein film that we got in the form of Justice League, we could have had Zack Snyder's original Justice League film, with the introduction of Darkseid. Unfortunately, Zack Snyder is not the only victim here. David Ayer's original Suicide Squad was butchered up to match the tone of Deadpool, and Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever was messed up too. Here's hoping they get released in the coming future, because I strongly believe that creators should have their visions fully realized. And now when they finally decide to settle on a plan, they are doing so with the wrong people, in my opinion, as I've explained earlier. I mean, imagine finally getting a live-action Justice League with all the major characters and the exciting storylines we were gonna get, such as the invasion of Darkseid and how the Justice League saves the world from annihilation. And as we were just getting started in Zack Snyder's Justice League, WB says, nope, we are not gonna continue the story, even though the film was a huge success and we may never get such a huge success ever again. And they are still looking for it. There's a reason why we have the Elseworlds label, to continue getting stories outside of the new DCU, so that there's something for everyone. The DCU is gonna be all goofy and comedic and not everyone's gonna vibe with that. So having some variety in content actually benefits your fan base. But nope, everyone's gonna get this goofy stuff and you are expected to consume it, whether you like it or not, and get excited for what's next. This is just not it. I'm not gonna waste my time and money for any of this. If Zack Snyder's story was complete, I would have been more welcoming towards this new film and the DCU. But WB decided against it, so I made my decision. I still believe that the SnyderVerse can be brought back as an Elseworlds story. Or maybe another studio like Universal or Amazon MGM could get the rights to continue this story. And it is totally possible. That is the main reason why we have the Elseworlds label. Or is this another sham marketing gimmick from James Gunn to bait the non-DCU fans and the general audience into supporting the DCU? In all due seriousness, even Zack Snyder and the cast would love to be back to reprise the roles. So there is no reason why this shouldn't happen. Now for what it's worth, I personally don't wish for the failure of this new film. Even though it's most likely going to, but I could be wrong. And I'm glad to be proven wrong in any case. There have been some films that are not really good, but they have been making a lot of money. And this could be another addition to that list. But since superhero fatigue is real, with the dismal performance of Thunderbolts being real-time proof, even when it resonated well with the audience, it may not meet those expectations. With that being said, I hope this film finds an audience, especially when it's releasing in between Jurassic World Rebirth and Fantastic Four. But as I mentioned from the beginning of this video, I will not be watching this film when it comes out. Even if it's in 3D, which is my preferred theatrical film format, I'm not watching it. If there's one thing I would like to request James Gunn, it is to release Superman on 3D Blu-ray. The film is converted to 3D and it will be released in 3D in cinemas. And it would be great if the 3D version makes its way to home media on a Blu-ray disc. And that's pretty much it. What do you guys think about the new Superman film? Are you excited for it? Will you be watching it in cinemas? Do let me know in the comments below. I know that a lot of people won't agree with what I've said, but that's totally understandable. And I hope you enjoy the film in July. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, have a great day. Goodbye.